Your being here right now is not an accident. I want you to sit with that for a moment before we go any further, because it matters more than it might initially seem. The inner prompting that led you to this, whatever form it took, whatever quiet urgency moved through you and directed your attention here today, that pull deserves your trust. You have been searching for something. Not in a frantic or desperate way necessarily, but in the deep and persistent way of someone who carries a question they cannot quite put down, who feels something stirring inside them that defies easy explanation, but refuses to be dismissed. This message found its way to you because you have been walking around with a particular kind of emotional weight for a long time now. Months, perhaps. Long enough that you have started to wonder whether what you feel is real, or whether you have been constructing something in your own mind that has no foundation outside of it. Long enough that you have probably tried more than once to reason yourself out of it, to decide that it was just feeling too much, that it would fade if you gave it enough time and enough distraction. But it has not faded, and that persistence is not a flaw in your thinking. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is information. It is your inner life trying to tell you something that the surface level of your daily experience has not yet caught up with. You have been carrying this mostly alone, which is its own particular kind of heavy. The kind that comes from not wanting to burden other people with something you cannot fully explain, from worrying that if you spoke it out loud it would sound like wishful thinking or obsession to someone who had not felt what you have felt. So you kept it quiet. You let it live inside you without giving it too much air, telling yourself that silence was the responsible choice, that you would wait until you had more certainty before bringing it into the light. But that quiet voice inside you, the one that has been with you through all the long nights and the failed attempts to redirect your attention elsewhere, it never agreed to be silenced. It simply kept speaking, kept returning, kept insisting that what you feel is real and that it is pointing towards something that deserves to be understood rather than suppressed. What if that persistent sensation is not a burden you need to manage but a signal you need to follow? What if the reason it keeps returning, the reason no amount of logic or distraction or time has managed to dissolve it, is that it is arising from a place in you that knows something your conscious mind is still only beginning to piece together? There is a quality of knowing that lies below the thinking layer of a person, below the analysis and the second-guessing and the protective stories the mind builds to keep overwhelming feelings at a safe distance. When something comes from that layer, when it rises from the part of you that exists before fear and after all the noise has quieted, it carries a different quality than ordinary thought or ordinary feeling. It has a steadiness to it, a refusal to be argued away, a persistence that does not depend on being validated from the outside to remain present inside you. That is what you have been experiencing. And you have been trying to be reasonable about it, trying to be fair and measured and not get ahead of yourself, but the reasonable explanations have never quite covered the full territory of what you actually feel. The reason your intuition keeps pulling you back toward this particular person is not because you are confusing longing with truth. It is because there is something genuinely real operating in this connection that your spirit recognized long before your intellect was ready to accept it. Some connections have a different quality than the ordinary ones. They carry a kind of resonance that does not behave the way other feelings behave. They do not diminish according to the expected schedule. Distance does not erode them in the way distance is supposed to erode things. Silence does not kill them. If anything, the silence seems to intensify them, seems to distill them into something purer and more undeniable than they were when the connection was active and close. You have been feeling that. The way certain thoughts about this person arrive not as nostalgia or fantasy, but as something more immediate, more present, more alive than something in the past should feel. The way your inner response to them is different in quality from your response to anyone else. That difference is not something you invented. It is something you have been accurately reading. Every attempt you have made to dismiss what you feel, to categorize it as something smaller than it is, to protect yourself from the vulnerability of fully acknowledging it, has resulted in it coming back stronger rather than fading. That pattern is itself a form of information. Things that are not real, things that are simply emotional habits or misread signals or wishful thinking, those things tend to diminish when you apply honest scrutiny to them. They thin out when you look directly at them. What you have been experiencing does the opposite. It solidifies under examination. It becomes more present, not less, the more honestly you look at it. And that quality, that resistance to being dissolved by honest attention, is one of the clearest signals available that what you are dealing with is not confusion, but recognition. You are not losing your grounding on reality. These feelings are not symptoms of something that needs to be corrected. They are arising from a genuine and deep place within you. When you actually listen to yourself, when you get quiet enough to hear what your inner knowing is saying beneath all the noise of daily life and all the protective commentary your mind generates to keep you from feeling too much, what you find is not delusion. What you find is clarity about something your soul has already understood. This connection is not a random convergence. It is not a coincidence with no meaning behind it. The person who entered your life and created this impact did not arrive by accident and has not remained so present in your interior life without reason. Something in you recognized something in them at a level that ordinary social interaction does not fully account for. Your mind, shaped by previous experiences of disappointment and loss and the specific kind of hurt that comes from loving something that did not work out, will try to categorize this as risk. It will reach for doubt as a protective tool, will try to convince you that the safer choice is to stay skeptical, to require more proof than your own deep knowing before you allow yourself to fully accept what you feel. That is an understandable response. The mind learns from pain and builds structures designed to prevent the same pain from happening again. But genuine depth of connection tends to carry signs that are difficult to replicate through wishful thinking alone. One of the clearest of those signs is a quality of peace that exists even in the absence of the person, even during the silence and the distance. Not the anxious non-peace of waiting and hoping and watching for signals, but a deeper, quieter layer of settled knowing that what is real between two people does not require constant proximity to remain real. That peace, when you can access it beneath all the surface noise, is your soul's way of confirming what it already knows. This bond has been functioning as a mirror in your life, reflecting back to you parts of yourself that might have remained hidden without its presence. The qualities it has drawn out of you, the ways it has pushed you toward growth and self-examination and a deeper engagement with who you actually are and what you actually want, those effects are not incidental. They are part of what this connection is for. Growth that happens in the context of a specific and meaningful bond is often the most significant and lasting growth a person experiences, because it is growth that is called forward by something beyond the ordinary. You did not change in these ways just because of internal development in isolation. You changed because this connection created a particular kind of pressure and a particular kind of opening that other things in your life were not creating. That is not nothing. That is one of the most important things that can happen to a person. If this is something you believe carries genuine significance, you have probably asked yourself the painful question of why the universe would allow such extended silence or such difficult distance to exist within it. That question deserves a real answer rather than a dismissive one. The path towards something genuinely significant rarely runs straight. It rarely looks, from inside the middle of it, like the direct route to anything good. What actually happens is that the path includes exactly the stretches of difficulty and separation and confusion that are necessary to produce the people who are capable of meeting each other at the depth the connection requires. What was planted between you at the beginning was a seed, not a finished thing. Seeds require the right conditions to develop. They require seasons that look, from the outside, like nothing is happening. They require the kind of preparation that is invisible until the moment it suddenly becomes visible. Time apart, silence, the discomfort of distance, all of these are not evidence that the connection was not real or is not still alive. They are part of the preparation that makes what comes next sustainable rather than simply intense. Both of you have been changing during this period. Both of you have been growing in ways that were made possible precisely because of the separation rather than in spite of it. When two people come together before they are genuinely ready to hold the depth of what exists between them, the intensity tends to overwhelm the foundation. It creates instability rather than rootedness. The pause, uncomfortable as it has been creating the conditions for something more solid to eventually become possible. There is a kind of agreement that exists at the deepest level of meaningful connections, an understanding that both people need to develop into fuller versions of themselves before they can truly meet each other in the way the connection is asking them to. That development does not happen in the presence of the other person. It happens in solitude, in the private and unobserved process of confronting the things in yourself that need to be confronted and integrating the things in yourself that need to be integrated. While you have been moving through your own version of this process, the same thing has been unfolding on the other side of the distance. Their path has mirrored yours in ways you may not have been able to see from where you stand. What has appeared from the outside as indifference or avoidance or simply moving on may not be any of those things. It may be someone who is in the middle of their own internal reckoning, who is dealing with their own fears and defenses, and the specific challenge of confronting feelings they tried to suppress and found they could not. The universe has a way of removing the distractions a person uses to avoid looking at themselves. When those distractions fall away, the things that were being avoided become unavoidable. The silence this person has been keeping is not the silence of someone who has forgotten you or moved comfortably past what existed between you. It is the silence of someone whose inner landscape has become too loud to manage comfortably, too full of things that keep pointing back to you, regardless of where they direct their attention. Their quiet is a battleground, not a place of settled peace. The feelings they attempted to set aside and leave there have grown roots that go deeper than they anticipated. The memories keep surfacing with an insistence that does not respond to distraction. The comparisons keep happening, and those comparisons keep resolving in the same direction, no matter how much effort goes into resisting that conclusion. Their sense of control over their own feelings about this connection is gradually being undermined by the feelings themselves, which are turning out to be more durable and more present than their coping strategies can keep up with. What looks like a closed chapter from your perspective has been anything but closed from theirs. They are in the middle of a transformation that their ego did not agree to and is not comfortable with. The slow and uncomfortable process of having old protective patterns stripped away by experiences that refuse to confirm them. Both of you are drawing toward a moment where the clarity that has been building in private begins to move toward expression. A point is approaching where the cost of remaining in the current state, carrying everything that is being carried in silence, becomes heavier than the vulnerability of finally moving towards something honest. If they return to you, and all of what is happening in the energetic and inner landscape of this connection suggests movement in that direction, it will not be an impulsive or unexamined return. It will not come from loneliness or simple nostalgia or the temporary discomfort of being without you. It will come from something that has been genuinely earned through real and difficult inner work. It will carry humility. It will carry the particular quality of sincerity that only emerges from someone who has been forced to look honestly at themselves and accept what they found there. It will arrive without the walls and the defenses that made the connection so painful before, because those walls will have been worn down not by external pressure but by the internal weight of what they have been carrying. When that shift arrives, you will not need to interrogate it for signals or pass it anxiously for signs of its reliability. It will have a directness and a clarity that distinguishes it clearly from the ambiguous and confusing communications that may have characterized earlier interactions. The universe does not move two people through this kind of extended preparation only to deliver something unclear and half-formed at the end of it. When the moment is right, it tends to announce itself in a way that leaves significantly less room for doubt than the uncertain middle of the journey has provided. Your final work in this period, the work that is being asked of you as things begin to shift and move, is to become genuinely ready to receive. And I want to be precise about what that means, because it is easy to confuse readiness with a particular kind of anxious waiting that actually works against what you are trying to create. Being ready to receive is not the tense, watchful state of someone scanning the horizon for the first sign of what they have been hoping for. It is something much quieter and more internally oriented than that. It is the work of releasing whatever residue of fear or resentment or bitterness is still occupying space inside you, whatever remains from the hurt of the difficult stretches, whatever protective hardness built up in the places where you felt most exposed and most alone. Those things are understandable. They are the natural products of having been through something genuinely difficult. But they also function as barriers between you and what is trying to come toward you, and releasing them is one of the most important things you can do right now. Let go of the rigid scripts you may have been writing in your mind about exactly how this should unfold, the detailed internal narrative about how the moment of reconnection should look and what should be said and in exactly what sequence things should happen. That level of specific expectation creates a kind of brittleness in your relationship to the future, a way of requiring reality to match your imagination so precisely that when it inevitably unfolds in its own way, you risk not fully recognizing or receiving it because it does not match the version you had prepared for. The universe tends to deliver things in forms slightly different from what we imagined, and the capacity to receive what actually arrives rather than what you pictured requires a looseness, an openness, a willingness to release control of the specifics in order to remain available to the reality. Forgiveness is part of this preparation, and it deserves to be discussed honestly. Not the kind of forgiveness that minimizes what was painful or pretends that the silence did not cost anything or that the distance was easy, but the kind that recognizes the larger context within which all of it happened. The other person's behavior during this period, whatever form it took, was the behavior of someone who was not yet where they needed to be. Someone operating from unresolved fear and incomplete self-knowledge and defenses that were genuinely limiting their capacity to show up fully. That understanding does not erase the impact of what their limitations cost you, but it does change the frame. It allows you to see the story as something larger than one person failing another, and to recognize that both of you were, in your different ways, being prepared by the same process for something neither of you was yet fully equipped to hold. Forgiveness understood this way is something you do for your own freedom rather than as a favor extended to someone else. Holding on to bitterness or resentment, even when those feelings are entirely justified, keeps you energetically connected to the painful version of the story rather than to the possibility of something new. It occupies space inside you that something better is trying to move into. Releasing it is not a betrayal of what you went through. It is the final and most important stage of actually completing the lesson that the difficult period was designed to teach. It is the difference between having survived something and having fully integrated it, between carrying the wound and carrying the wisdom that emerged from it. As things continue to move and the energy between you continues to shift and clarify, stay grounded in the peace you have worked to build. You may begin to notice things intensifying, signs appearing more frequently, a sharper quality to your intuition, a sense of something gathering toward a particular moment. Let that excitement exist without letting it destabilize the inner steadiness you have earned. The peace you have developed over this period is not just something to feel good about as a personal achievement. It is the literal foundation upon which anything lasting and real can actually stand. Connections that are built on the unstable ground of unresolved wounds and unexamined fear tend to recreate the very dynamics that broke them in the first place. The preparation you have done, the growth and the self-examination and the inner work of becoming more complete within yourself is what makes a different and better outcome genuinely possible this time. The universe has not been putting you through this period as a form of punishment or as evidence that what you want is not available to you. It has been elevating you, guiding you toward a level of maturity and clarity and self-knowledge that was necessary before the next chapter could be written. What is emerging in you through this process, the stronger relationship with your own worth, the clearer understanding of what you actually need and will not compromise on, the deeper trust in your own inner knowing. These qualities are not just preparations for a possible reunion. They are the truest and most lasting gift of the entire journey because they belong to you completely and permanently, regardless of any external outcome. You are standing near the beginning of a significant shift, even if nothing on the surface looks like movement yet. Real transitions rarely announce themselves loudly. They tend to begin in the background, in places where understanding is still forming, where old emotional habits are loosening, and where your internal landscape is quietly reorganizing itself without asking for permission. What feels like stillness is often preparation. Not absence of change, but change working at a level that has not yet become visible. Both you and this person are moving towards something that feels like alignment, not because everything is already resolved, but because life has a way of continuing to shape people even when they are not consciously participating in that shaping. Time, distance, reflection, and lived emotional experience all leave marks. And those marks gradually influence what a person is capable of understanding, holding, and choosing. But the most important part of this shift is not about the other person arriving at a particular realization. It is about what is happening within you while all of this unfolds. Because the readiness being asked of you is not the readiness of someone who is waiting at the edge of something, holding their breath for an outcome to appear. It is not the readiness of someone whose emotional state depends on whether another person returns or responds or finally sees something clearly. That kind of readiness is fragile because it is built outward on uncertainty and expectation. The readiness that matters now is something very different. It is the readiness of someone who has already begun to come back to themselves. Someone who is no longer defined by waiting. Someone who is no longer organizing their emotional world around the possibility of another person's shift. Someone who has learned, through experience rather than theory, that their own stability cannot depend on someone else's clarity arriving on a schedule they do not control. This kind of readiness feels quieter. It does not rush. It does not cling. It does not try to accelerate outcomes. Instead, it rests on something more grounded: self-recognition. The understanding that your life is not paused in anticipation of a single outcome. It is unfolding continuously, with or without external confirmation. And you are still becoming, still expanding, still integrating everything you have lived through. That is what makes this moment different from earlier stages. You are not the same person who first entered this emotional landscape. You are not the same person who needed immediate answers to feel steady. You are not the same person who interpreted silence as stagnation or distance as finality. Something in you has matured through uncertainty itself, and that maturity changes how you relate to possibility. Because when you are internally anchored, possibility no longer feels like something you must chase or secure. It becomes something you can simply meet. Trust what you have built within yourself, not as an idea, but as lived experience. The resilience you developed in moments where you had no guarantees, the emotional clarity you gained through confusion, the patience you learned when outcomes were delayed, the self-awareness that came from noticing your own patterns in real time rather than after the fact. These are not abstract traits. They are evidence of inner construction that does not disappear when external circumstances remain unresolved. Even when progress feels invisible, it is still present. Growth rarely feels like expansion while it is happening. More often, it feels like repetition, like emotional fatigue, like returning to the same questions in slightly different forms. But beneath that repetition, something is changing. Your relationship to uncertainty itself. It becomes less threatening, less defining, less capable of pulling you away from your own center. Trust that process. Because what is genuinely meant for your life does not require you to abandon yourself in order to reach it. It does not demand that you shrink your awareness, silence your needs, or postpone your emotional well-being until some future moment of arrival. It moves in ways that can meet you where you are becoming more fully yourself, not less. And that is a key distinction. There are experiences that pull you into contraction, into overfocus, into emotional dependence on outcomes. And there are experiences that invite expansion, even if they include uncertainty along the way. What is aligned does not require you to become less grounded in order to receive it. It asks you to remain exactly where you are, becoming more whole. Stay open, but not unanchored. Stay receptive, but not dependent. Stay connected to possibility, but not defined by it. There is a subtle strength in that balance. It does not rush the future, but it also does not freeze the present. It allows life to continue unfolding without making your worth contingent on a specific result. And perhaps most importantly, it removes the illusion that you are waiting for your life to begin. Your life is already happening. This moment, with all its uncertainty, is part of it. The growth you are experiencing is part of it. The emotional clarity you are developing is part of it. Even the questions that remain unanswered are part of it. So when we speak of alignment, it is not something far away that you must reach through effort or endurance. It is something that becomes more visible when you are no longer out of alignment with yourself. And that is already underway. You are not waiting at the edge of your story. You are inside it, moving through a chapter that is shaping the way you will understand connection, timing, and emotional truth for a long time to come. So allow things to move without forcing them. Allow understanding to arrive in its own rhythm. Allow people to reveal their capacity in their own time. And above all, allow yourself to remain intact through it all. Because the most significant shift is not only what comes toward you, it is the version of you that is capable of receiving it without losing yourself in the process.